There is a moment in every relationship that almost no one notices while it is happening. It isn't distance, betrayal, or silence. Those are only the symptoms that appear later. The real ending begins much earlier, in a place so ordinary that it never feels dangerous. It begins the day someone discovers they can experience life exactly the same whether you're present or absent. They still smile. They still sleep. They still make plans. They still wake up expecting tomorrow to arrive. Nothing inside their world collapses because your presence is no longer holding it together. That realization doesn't happen all at once. It grows quietly until one day the person you believed needed you has already learned how to exist without you, while you're still acting as if your importance is unquestionable. The hardest truth isn't that someone stopped loving you. People often survive that realization. What breaks them is discovering that they were never as essential as they imagined. Every sacrifice suddenly feels different. Every memory changes shape. Moments that once looked like proof of irreplaceable connection begin to resemble convenience instead. You start replaying conversations, searching for the exact second everything shifted, convinced there must have been a mistake you could have corrected. But the frightening part is that there often isn't a single moment. Need rarely disappears in one dramatic collapse. It fades through repetition. Human beings adapt to almost everything, including people they once believed they couldn't live without. At first, dependence disguises itself as affection. Someone wants you around constantly. They look for your opinion before making decisions. Your attention changes their mood. Your presence makes ordinary days feel complete. It feels powerful because it convinces you that your existence has become woven into theirs. But the human mind has an extraordinary ability to normalize whatever it receives consistently. What once felt rare gradually becomes expected. The comfort you believed was strengthening the bond quietly removes the urgency that created it. Familiarity doesn't always deepen appreciation. Sometimes it slowly convinces people that what they have today will still be there tomorrow, no matter how they treat it. That's why the transformation is almost invisible. Nothing dramatic happens. They don't suddenly become cold. They simply stop reaching with the same intensity. The conversations become easier to postpone. Your absence creates fewer questions than it once did. They begin solving problems without thinking about you first. They laugh just as easily when you're not there. None of these moments seem important on their own, but together they build a terrifying conclusion. You are no longer part of the structure holding their emotional world together. You have become one of many pieces instead of the foundation you imagined yourself to be. Most people respond to this shift in exactly the wrong way because they mistake reduced need for temporary distance. They give more time, more patience, more understanding, believing enough consistency will restore what has quietly disappeared. But increasing your effort after someone has stopped depending on your presence often accelerates the process instead of reversing it. Every additional sacrifice silently communicates that you'll continue investing regardless of what you receive in return. The relationship becomes emotionally predictable, and predictability has a strange effect on human perception. The easier something is to access, the less urgently the mind protects it. This is why people are often blindsided by endings that everyone else seemed to predict. From the outside, the pattern was obvious. Inside the relationship, hope edits reality. You notice moments of closeness and ignore the growing spaces between them. You remember who they used to be instead of recognizing who they've quietly become. The mind protects itself with old memories because accepting the present would force it to admit that the connection has already changed. You aren't reacting to today's relationship anymore. You're protecting yesterday's version of it, long after it stopped existing. The cruel irony is that you often become most devoted at the exact moment your importance is fading. You sense something slipping away, even if you can't explain it, so you compensate by becoming more available, more forgiving, more emotionally present. You believe love is measured by how much of yourself you can give before the other person finally remembers your value. But people rarely recognize value because it is constantly offered. They recognize it when its absence changes the shape of their world. If your presence no longer changes anything, your effort becomes invisible, not because it lacks sincerity, but because it has become part of the background of their life. And that is the realization almost nobody is prepared for. They didn't wake up one morning deciding they no longer needed you. They simply lived enough ordinary days without depending on your presence that your absence stopped feeling like a loss. By the time you sensed something was wrong, they had already crossed an emotional distance that couldn't be measured by miles, arguments, or time. It was measured by something far quieter. The moment life continued without reaching for you first. The tragedy is that most people never recognize this transition because they are searching for evidence of rejection instead of evidence of adaptation. Rejection is loud. It announces itself through conflict, distance, or obvious indifference. Adaptation is almost silent. It happens while life continues to look familiar. You still spend time together. You still share routines. You still believe there is something stable beneath the surface because nothing has collapsed yet. But beneath that appearance, something far more permanent is taking shape. The emotional weight you once carried in their world is slowly being redistributed. They are learning to solve loneliness without you, celebrate without you, recover without you, and eventually imagine a future where your presence is no longer necessary. By the time you begin asking yourself what changed, they have already answered the question without ever putting it into words. This is why the ending often feels so one-sided. You experience it as a sudden loss because your emotional world remained connected to the version of them that still depended on you. They experience it as the final step in a process they have been living for months. While you were preserving the relationship through hope, they were quietly rehearsing life without it. That difference in timing explains why one person is devastated while the other appears strangely calm. It isn't always because they cared less. It is because they had already endured the emotional separation long before the physical one arrived. Their grief happened in slow motion. Yours arrived all at once. Human beings rarely notice what they stop needing. Attention naturally follows absence, not consistency. The heart reacts most intensely to what interrupts its expectations, not to what endlessly fulfills them. That is why your constant presence, which once felt like security, gradually became something the mind no longer consciously acknowledged. Like the sound of rain after hours of listening, it disappeared into the background. It was still there, but it no longer demanded awareness. You confused being familiar with being unforgettable, never realizing those two things can slowly become opposites. What makes this realization unbearable is that you begin questioning every memory that once gave you certainty. You remember the nights they said they couldn't imagine losing you. You remember the promises that sounded impossible to break. You remember believing that what you shared was different from everyone else's story. None of those moments were necessarily lies. They were simply true for the person they were at that time. People don't only change their opinions. They change the emotional architecture inside themselves. Someone who once genuinely believed they needed you can eventually become someone who no longer feels your absence in the same way. The promise didn't always disappear overnight. The person who made it slowly did. There is also another truth that almost nobody wants to admit. Sometimes your identity quietly becomes attached to being needed more than being known. You begin measuring your worth by how much someone relies on you. Their dependence becomes proof that your existence matters. Without realizing it, you stop asking whether they truly understand you because you become satisfied with the feeling of being important. But importance built on necessity is fragile. The moment another person learns to stand on their own, the role you built your identity around begins disappearing with them. That is why the loss feels larger than a relationship ending. It feels as though part of your own identity vanished alongside it. The mind fights this realization with endless explanations. Maybe they are confused. Maybe they are overwhelmed. Maybe they just need more time. Those possibilities are comforting because they preserve the belief that the connection still exists somewhere beneath the surface. Accepting the alternative is far more painful. It means acknowledging that nothing dramatic had to happen for someone to stop organizing their life around your presence. Sometimes people simply grow into a version of themselves where you occupy less emotional space than you once did. There is no villain to blame and no single mistake to correct. Only the quiet evolution of two lives moving at different emotional speeds. Perhaps the most unsettling part is realizing that you sensed it long before you admitted it. There were moments when the room felt different even though nothing had changed. Conversations ended a little sooner. Your absence lasted a little longer before it was noticed. The excitement in their eyes slowly became familiarity, and familiarity slowly became emotional habit. Deep down, you felt the shift, but you rejected your own instincts because accepting them would have forced you to confront a truth you were not ready to carry. So you kept believing that if you loved harder, waited longer, or understood more, the connection would return to what it used to be. You weren't protecting the relationship anymore. You were protecting the memory of how it once made you feel. And memories have a dangerous habit of convincing us that the past is still alive. They allow us to confuse echoes with reality, to mistake emotional residue for genuine closeness. By the time those echoes finally become silent, the person standing in front of you is no longer the one you spent so much energy trying to hold on to. They have already learned the lesson you refused to see. Their life continued. And somewhere along the way, it stopped asking whether you were part of it. For the strongest retention, the last part shouldn't be long. A 420 to 500 word ending is ideal for a 1,600 to 1,700 word script. It should feel like the final psychological twist rather than another explanation. The most painful realization isn't that they chose someone else, walked away, or stopped caring. It's realizing they had already built a life where your absence no longer interrupted anything. While you were still trying to understand the distance between you, they had already adjusted to it. The silence didn't create the separation. It only revealed one that had been growing for far longer than either of you admitted. That's why the end feels so unfair. You remember the beginning, the intensity, the promises, the feeling that your presence changed everything. They remember something different. They remember gradually discovering they could carry on without reaching for you. Not because you had become a bad person, but because your place in their emotional world slowly became smaller than the place you believed you held. People rarely notice when someone becomes part of the background of their lives. Familiarity has a strange effect on the human mind. The more constant something becomes, the less consciously it is valued. You believed your consistency was protecting the connection. In reality, it allowed them to experience life with you until life no longer felt different because of you. The comfort you offered became the new normal, and the new normal rarely feels extraordinary. Looking back, the signs were always there. They stopped searching for you first. They stopped needing your reassurance before making decisions. Your absence created less curiosity than it once had. None of those moments seemed important by themselves, but together they told a story you refused to hear. The relationship wasn't collapsing overnight. It was slowly becoming independent of your existence. That is why people are often shocked by endings everyone else saw coming. They are still living inside old memories while the other person has already moved into a different emotional reality. Hope keeps replaying yesterday until today becomes impossible to recognize. Perhaps that is what hurts most. You weren't fighting to keep a relationship alive. You were trying to return to a version of someone that no longer existed. The person you missed had already disappeared long before they physically left, and the version of you that kept chasing them disappeared right alongside them. In the end, they didn't leave because they hated you. They left because life had quietly taught them something neither of you noticed soon enough. They had learned how to live without you. And once someone no longer needs your presence to feel complete, They don't have to make the decision to let you go. They already did.